Welcome to the EntrePastors podcast on YouTube. This is a show that helps pastors think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs. Well, hello there, and welcome to the EntrePastors podcast on YouTube. I'm John Sanders, one of the co-founders of EntrePastors, and this episode is going to be titled Making God Number One in Your Business. And that title comes directly from this book, Making God Number One in Your Business, by our guest today. Her name is Mauri Rene, and she is not a pastor, but she has a heart for ministry, and she's been a very successful entrepreneur, and she recognizes how business can be an incredible platform for ministry to take place. She makes the point, and we hear this often on our podcast, that there are way more opportunities to do ministry out in the marketplace all week long versus the small window of time we have to do ministry inside the four walls of a church building for 1 hour on Sunday. And so her whole message is to business owners about how you can utilize your business as a platform for ministry when you recognize it as that and you see God as the number one owner of your business. That's what she writes about in her book, and that's what she talks about in this podcast interview coming up. So I'm excited to share this with you. Without any further ado, check out this conversation I have had recently with my friend Mauri Rene. Here we go. Well, Mauri, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the EntrePastors podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you actually are a member in our business builders community, but you're not necessarily a pastor. And I don't say that like with any kind of put down. I think that in some ways you're like the rose among the thorns in our group. But you absolutely are serving people in a ministry capacity, whether you realize it or not. I think you do realize it on some level. And I know that you've got a story that is going to add value to our listeners, who, by the way, are not all pastors themselves. So we've got certainly many of non-pastors who listen to this show as well. But let's start by just getting kind of an overview of your story. And then I want to dive deep into the work that you're doing today and talk about the book that you've got, and we'll go from there. So tell us a little bit about your background. What's your story?
Sure. Well, I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years, and I'd like to say I've been a Christian all my life, but that's been a journey as well, learning, how to build a relationship with God and everything. But I'm originally from North Dakota, and I lived in Virginia for most of my adult life. That's where most of my business experience is. And a number of years ago, we were living in Virginia and decided to move back to our hometown because our fathers had both passed away, and we thought, it'd be good to be near our moms. And we sold our house, and I sold my last big business, and we trekked back to North Dakota, and everything was great. From the age that I was at, it was wonderful. I was in a 21-year marriage. I was semi-retired. I was healthy, wealthy. I mean, like everything good, right?
Yeah.
And until it wasn't. And I learned a lot from this. I learned that sometimes you have to be totally broken before God can use you in the way that He wants to. So first came the divorce, and before anybody judges me, sometimes you cannot stop a divorce. I'm sorry, it just
That's
doesn't
true.
always work that way,
True.
and it takes two. And then the people I had sold the business to in Virginia, they quit paying and then ended up filing bankruptcy, so they want my retirement. I had started a couple of small businesses in my semi-retirement. One was kitchen and cabinet design, and the other was business consulting. Because all of the years that I was doing very well, I always wanted to help everybody, and I did. I wanted my friends to do what I was doing, growing their businesses, doing well. And I thought, well, I should do that as a business, just part-time. So I had a couple of clients doing that, and I even wrote a couple books, put them on Amazon, but that was just for my business, just business books. Well, the next thing that happened was after the business failed on their end, they filed bankruptcy, and then I lost the one builder I had for my cabinet design company. And then, of course, one of my clients, it was a short-term contract for the business consulting. Another one graduated, which is what you want. You don't want to keep them forever. You want them to
Right.
grow and go.
Right.
So I had one client left. So I'm kind of broke. So now I'm alone, I'm broke. And then I get very, very sick, end up in the hospital. And literally on day 5, I'm dying. That's it. Like there's no,
Mm.
it's not good. When the doctors are saying it's not good, you just, it's not good. So all I had left was my dog, and I'm in the hospital and I'm making arrangements for her to go somewhere for when I go home to Jesus. And
Mm.
I wasn't afraid to die. In fact, I was like, "Oh, well, Jesus, I guess I get to meet you now."
Yeah.
Finally, face to face. And as you can tell, I'm sitting here, which means it didn't happen. So after the a very long surgery and everything, I came out of it. And then I had a long recovery, and then add more insult to injury, I had medical bills.
Mm.
And these are just the highlights. A whole lot more happened, but we don't have
Sure.
2 days to talk about it. So,
Sure.
basically, I go from being in a marriage and healthy, wealthy, semi-retired, life is good, to none of that. It's all
Mm.
flipped upside down. So after the recovery, I was like, I know that God kept me here for a reason. He's not done with me yet. So I said, well, God, what is my purpose here? And he kept giving me a title of a book. Now, I never aspired to be an author at all. I just
Mm.
did a couple of books for my clients, or future clients. And he gave me the title, Making God Number One in Your Business. And I'm like, well, God, that's awesome. I was excited at first because I'm like, you gave me mad business skills, and I've always tried to run my business in a godly way, and this is going to be great. Uh, yeah, except God's in the title. And I'm not a pastor. I've never had a calling to be one. I know I won't ever be a pastor. I didn't go to seminary school. I'm like, but God, I can't do this. And so I went to my church, to my pastors. I went to everybody looking for help. I'm like, I need help with this because I don't know what I'm doing. I know the business part, but what about the God part? I love God. I've studied the Bible, but I still didn't feel equipped. And then I started thinking about, well, Moses wasn't equipped. He said the same thing, and God worked through him.
Mhm.
So finally, after quite a bit of time of wrestling with this, I was like, well, okay, you asked me to do this. I got to do it. And I sat down at the laptop and I started typing in the title. And I literally just said, okay, now what? Because I don't know what to do. And the only way I can describe it is Holy Spirit download. I don't know what other terminology to use. It's a very difficult thing to describe what happened to me, but words just started flowing through me. And then, I kept hearing, scripture, scripture. He made me work for it. Believe me, it wasn't like just he gave me all the words and then the book was done. I had to work for it. So I was constantly looking up scripture to back everything up. And because there's a lot of scripture throughout the book that explains, everything. And I just kept rolling with it. And interestingly enough, I learned a very valuable lesson. I really preach this. I tell people, journal, journal, journal,
Yeah.
journal, because I hadn't journaled until shortly before the book. And I had forgotten all of the beautiful miracles that God had provided for me in my business.
Mm.
It's not that I intentionally forgot them. It's not like I want to be ungrateful, but things happen, and we're like on our knees thanking God. And then all of a sudden we kind of move on. Like life
Yep.
still keeps going and we forget.
Yep.
And I wish I had journaled all of that. Nonetheless, the Holy Spirit is awesome. He pulled out a lot of that stuff out of me. He reminded me of experiences where he came to my rescue in business.
Mm.
And that was exciting too, because it reminded me, and now those are permanently journaled in my book, which is
Love it.
kind of cool. But so I learned a very valuable lesson, like journal everything, and so you can continue to be grateful to God for everything that he gives you in life and in business.
Yeah.
And then he wasn't quite done. Well, he's never going to be done with me, but there was more. He wanted me to do a workbook so that people wouldn't just shelf the book, they would actually use the tools in the book. And then I'm like, well, God, there's got to be more, because this, like what else? And right now, what he currently is having me try to work on is to encourage business owners to get into small groups. Like, in church, when you have like Bible study, small groups, connect groups, every church calls them something.
Yeah.
Having business owners or even leaders, leadership people to get into small groups on their own, not a group that I lead or anything like that, but just get their own group and work on it together, because they can expound on the tools in the book and they can lift each other up, which is what we're supposed to do. That's why we have small groups, so we can lift each other up and help each other, but also to hold each other accountable.
Hmm.
And that's currently what I'm working on now, is encouraging people to get into groups and really work on this, and disciple for Jesus, glorify God with our businesses like we're supposed to, discipleship, and also to add more joy and less stress in our businesses and our calling. And that's where I'm at today. And what I've learned, the biggest lesson is that when you're going through the worst, how I think it's Paul that says, stay joyful, no matter what happens.
Yeah.
And I did throughout everything that that God allowed to happen to me, all the bad. I knew he was going to take care of me. I leaned on him and I just let go and let him do what he needed to do. And it really, really changed me a lot. And
Wow.
now my heart's on fire for this. He's really put it in my heart to do this. And it's a very exciting journey.
When I hear you share your story, my mind goes to the story of Job in the Old Testament, someone who was righteous and blessed in every way, and then God allowed the enemy to take all of it, minus his life, and then God restored him. But boy, there was a season of questioning and suffering, um, and so I appreciate you sharing that story. I want to go back. There's a lot of directions I want to go in this, but tell us, just briefly describe what businesses you were in. I heard you mention like a cabinet business, but what when you really were experiencing a lot of success in business, what was the business that you were doing?
Yes, I had a construction company for 25 years. I had a couple of flooring stores. We had a car stereo business, and oh my gosh, so many different businesses before this happened. And towards like my during my situation with everything going wrong, I did try starting up even a couple of other businesses, and I did okay with them, but that's not what God wanted me to do. So it didn't last very long.
Yeah.
This is what he wants me to do. But yeah, I've had quite a few different businesses over the years.
So when you describe those other businesses, like at EntrePastors, we kind of have three different like broad pathways we describe that pastors could consider going down and launching a business. Those would be probably what we would just generically lump into like the service-based space where you're providing a service, maybe a retail type of a product, uh, but then we've got what you're doing now. One of the other three is what we call the information-based pathway, and it's where you're really building a business model around an idea or a core message. So in your case, you've got a book, you have a desire to, speak and get these groups started, and I'm assuming there's a business model around that. There's a revenue model. I'm just curious, like as someone who has experienced a lot of success in business in the one realm, what is it like as you've kind of transitioned into this new realm where you're in, you're writing, you're speaking? Are there maybe just talk about where are they similar? What are those timeless business principles that are the same, and then what are some nuanced differences that you're bumping into that are kind of different from that world of being brick and mortar, service based type stuff? Does that make sense? What I'm asking?
It does, and I'm really glad you asked that, because that's been a journey all on its own. I was so used to brick and mortar, and in my community, everyone knew me because I
Hmm.
was constantly out, networking with people, meeting people, and I was very well known in my community in Virginia. And I had, marketing, no, I mean, networking was my biggest thing. And what was interesting with the book is I thought it had to be done differently. I thought, and I've always been go big or go home girl. So I'm like, well, this has to get out to the whole world. God said the whole world. So I'm trying to set the whole world on fire all at once. And I've never done my businesses with technology, social media, none of that. It was all like in person type stuff. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, now I've got to learn all this technology. And it was very cumbersome, to say the least. And I had kind of got about it the wrong way because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't understand the book world. And I didn't understand that, you can't get the entire country to hear you all at once. And
Yeah.
I ended up coming right back to where, and this wasn't too long ago either. I ended up coming right back to where I started in business, and I will stick by this forever. I believe that no matter what changes in this world, some things stay the same. And one of those things is people. You need to get a relationship built with people in order to
Yeah.
sell anything. And it's hard to do that with strangers online. I mean, that takes a lot of time. And so I came back to, well, maybe you should start in your own backyard like you did with your other businesses.
Hmm.
And I'm new to Arizona. I live in Arizona now. I'm new here. I'm staying, by the way, if God willing, I'm staying because I absolutely love it here more than I ever thought I would. And I didn't know anyone here. So I thought, well, what's the difference? But there is a difference. Now that I started really getting out and away from the computer and all the Zooms, and actually meeting people here and starting stuff here. I'm even starting a networking group here for Christian business owners so we can work together. All of a sudden things are starting to pick back up again like they should. So I really came back full circle with it. And what's funny is God only gives you little pieces at a time
Yeah.
of the puzzle. And at first that was frustrating for me,
Hmm.
but had he given me the last few years, had he given me the whole thing, I probably, and I don't want to ever be disobedient, don't take this wrong, but I probably would have said, nope,
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
not doing, I'm not doing it because there's no way that I'm going to survive through all that over the next few years. And he just gives me a piece at a time and a piece at a time. And I'm okay with that because you know what? He always provides for me. I'm always okay through
Yeah.
everything that I've been through, even at my lowest moment where I was completely broke. I mean, like I had no money coming in, I had all these bills. It would take me an hour to tell you about all of the supernatural ways that money came and paid my bills. God
Hmm.
was there for me to get me through all of that. And now I'm going back up to, where I was previously. I'm not there yet. I'm still working on it. But I realize that with no matter what business you have, there are certain key principles that are going to work and you just have to go back to the basics. Now, yeah, technology is great. Social media has been very, very helpful. That's how I met you. And it's great that we have the internet and everything, but we still have to go back to relationships with people because people are our business.
Yeah, that's so good because I think sometimes we want the easy button. If I just put enough money into Facebook ads or into something, I just sit back and watch all the sales come in. And in many cases, it's always the case. You have to build relationships. Maybe you hit a tipping point where you can really start to scale, but at some point, and especially in the early days of a startup, like it is all relationships and it's building those. Something else you said I just want to key in on is that it's the same principle, just a different application that we often share with our community. So often we see pastors that they know they need to do something, but they can't, since they can't see all the way to the end, they're like, well, I'm just not going to start. They're waiting for all the lights to turn green before they take that first step. And so it's that same principle of a lot of times we just have enough, illumination, if you will, to take the next step, maybe the next two steps. And then beyond that becomes more clear. And a lot of times it's us helping push some people through that discomfort of like, take the step because we don't know, I can't tell you how it's all going to look, but you need to take the first step. Something else I wanted to key in on that you just said is what I was thinking as you were telling your story. There's a mindset. So when you've been to the top of the mountain, even if you experience hard things and you get some significant setbacks, the difference between you and someone else that has never been to the top of the mountain, you know how to get there. And I don't say that to discourage someone who's never seen the top of the mountain. I'm pointing something out. The only difference, it's not about Mauri has more money in her bank account than this other
Right.
person just getting started. It's Mauri has a different mindset. She's going to get to the top of that mountain much faster because she knows it's possible. She knows how to do it. and she believes that she can do it, versus somebody who is looking at this going, I've never climbed a mountain. I have no idea how to build wealth through business. So you can say more around that, but I just wanted our community to hear that you know what, it's the mindset is the biggest piece. You'll figure all the other stuff out if you actually believe that it's possible to get there. What would you, and feel free to push back, don't let me put words in your mouth, but what would you say to that?
No, you're 100% correct. I I never had a plan B when I went into business. I think that's really the key. I had a friend one time that started a business and she had a plan B. She said, "Well, if it doesn't work, I'll just shut it down, file bankruptcy, and walk away."
Mm,
And I instantly, I'm thinking in my head, she's not going to make it.
mm,
Business isn't never going to make it because she's got a plan B, and her plan B is not a very good one. It's a pretty negative one.
mm.
Sure enough, a year or so later, she was done,
Yeah.
and it hurt her family pretty bad. I just never have a plan B. I used to say I build the plane while I'm flying it. Now it's God's building the plane. And, I have to involve him more. And I've learned a lot about that. Even though I thought that I had run my business in a godly way and everything, I learned now after him having me write the book that it's not my business to begin with. It's not my plane. It's not my anything. It's all his. He is asking me to steward it. He gave me skills and talent so I could steward all of this. That is really key to, especially now. That is really key to remember that he is the owner. He's the one. And when you have that mindset, it takes the stress out of it. I used to be a bit stressed with those other businesses.
Mm,
And even though I didn't have a plan B, I worked really, really hard to climb that mountain, but it was a little bit stressful along the way until I brought God into it. And then the stress started to go away. And the more I bring him into it, the more I realize, hey, wait, this isn't mine. It's his. And some of this stuff is his problem, not mine. It takes all the stress away and I can enjoy the journey. You should enjoy your calling. You should enjoy your journey. And like I said, no plan B.
yeah, that's
Further
good.
ahead, climb all the while I was climbing that mountain. There was no plan B. I was going to get to the top, and I'm back there again, and I'm going to get to the top of the mountain again.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to get to walk beside you on that journey for a ways as you're climbing. That's awesome. Let me ask you this. If there's a pastor listening to this who is hearing your vision of like getting business groups going inside of churches, that sort of thing, and they wanted to reach out to you for help, like what would you say to that pastor? And feel free, by the way, to also share some of your frustrations, because I want pastors to hear this as well. I know that you've bumped into that before as you've approached pastors. You're passionate about this, and then you're maybe not always met with as passionate of a response from some of these pastors. So maybe speak to that pastor of why you're so passionate about getting these groups of entrepreneurial, business-minded people together in the church world, and what that might look like if they wanted to reach out to you and say, "Hey, help me get that started here in my church or in my community."
I would love to. Every time I approach a pastor with this, they they hear the word business and they s- back off, like they won't have anything to do with me,
Mm,
and they never give me the chance to say, "Hold on a minute. The number one place right now to lead people to Jesus is the marketplace."
mm,
When someone is broken and well, we're all broken, but when someone is in trouble and they need help and they don't know Jesus, they're not going to run to the nearest church,
yep,
but they're always out in the marketplace and they're always listening.
yep,
I really believe that the business owners, and I've talked to a lot of business owners that feel this way as well. They go to church on Sunday and they hear the word, the sermon, and they maybe are in a Bible study. Come Monday, they walk into their business and God just goes right out the window because they've not been taught how to. First of all, most Christian business owners don't even realize God owns their business. They've given their life to Jesus, but they don't realize that the business belongs to him as well. And I understand that there's only 10 to 15% of your congregation is going to be a business owner. So you can't do your sermons based around business owners. That makes perfect sense to me. What I'm asking is for them to just open up their minds about the business owners who need their help that they can't help. Refer them to this, refer them to the book and the workbook, and to do small groups and work on it together, so that the business owners have the opportunity to bring God into their business. And I understand pastors are very busy and they don't have a lot of time. I'm not asking them to set the groups up. Just talk to the congregation and say, hey, we have something to help you. A lot of business owners I talk to, I'm going to be straight up, they feel like a checkbook to the church.
Mm.
They're the first ones that everyone goes to donate. They're the
Yep.
first ones that everyone goes to. They want money. Now, that might not be the intention, but that's how a lot of us feel. We feel like, oh, well, we're supposed to give more because they think we make more. And maybe we do, maybe we don't. But what about us? What about the help for us businesses from the church? Like I said, I can't burden the pastors, and I have been told that by some pastors. I said we're too busy to do anything. And then I say, well, let me speak to your congregation, to the business owners of your congregation. That's where my speaking engagements are. So let me speak to the business owners. Tell them, what this can do for them, or just put it in a bulletin or in a sermon or somewhere. Get it out that this is available, that you really care about the business owners. The other thing is, Paul was a tent maker and he used the tent making business to disciple these business owners. If you let's just put it this way, exponential is one of my favorite words.
Mm.
And God does things exponentially. Business owners are taught the tools to lead people to Jesus with their business. And statistically speaking, business owners run into a lot more people than non-business owners. Not
Right.
all of them, but most of them. Just think of what they could do. Just think of how it could exponentially grow in leading people to Jesus.
Mm.
That's going to help the church, the community. It's going to help everyone. There are so many things that something like this can do for the business owners, which in turn helps the community and the church, and everyone wins. So instead of hearing the word business and freaking out and saying, well, business doesn't belong in church, remember that some of your parishioners are business owners and they need help too. They don't want to be looked at as a checkbook. They want to know how God should be in their business. But the other thing is fear. Business owners are afraid. They're afraid of losing business because of, like talking about Jesus or what have you. And the book actually talks about that and how to deal with that. You don't have to be preachy and you don't have to have a pulpit. It's not your job as a business owner. Your job is to use your business to glorify God and lead people to Jesus. But business owners usually don't know how to do that exactly. And so that's basically what I would love for pastors to reach out to me for. I can help them as far as they don't have to spend a lot of time. We can work on something, just a 20-minute chat. We could probably figure out the best way for me to either talk to them or for them to get the word out. But they would see such a difference.
Mm.
I think that, in a church that I previously went to up until recently, the pastor keeps saying not enough people are serving and they're not tithing. And I'm thinking, well, why not give people more of a reason to serve and tithe?
Mm.
It's a give and take. And this would really make a difference. I think that once business owners knew that someone cared about them, about integrating faith in their business, I think you would see a lot more serving and a lot more tithing. And they would have more time to do the serving, because the tools in the book would help give them a lot more time away from
Yeah.
their business, a lot more free time.
I'm grateful for you sharing that just openly. I believe in this community, this audience is going to be a much more, quote unquote, friendly audience to your message, because people are already leaning into this idea of, marketplace ministry and that intersection. Having said that, I'm just going to affirm what you said, that because I'm in a lot of different groups of pastors on Facebook, and the minute you either use the word business or even imply something about marketplace, I just get lit up in these groups by some of the meanest, people that call themselves pastors and Christians. They say some of the harshest, meanest things. And there's just a repulsion to anything business brought into the church. And like, I don't see that as a good thing. I see that as a huge problem. I see that as, failing to really recognize where people are at 90% of the week, and it's not sitting in church on a Sunday. It's out in the marketplace, engaged in marketplace activities. And so I'm sympathetic to that message and to the journey, the mission that you're on there. And I wish you well with that. Because again, in some ways we're fighting the same battle to some degree,
Hmm.
just maybe from a
Yes.
slightly different angle. But let me ask this. I want to keep an eye on the time here and not let this go too long.
Sure.
There's a lot more I'd love to say, so maybe we'll bring you back on for another conversation. I'm going to buy your book. I'm going to be out in Arizona soon, and maybe I can get an autograph copy from you. We'll talk about that after the interview. But where can people go get a copy of your book, and where can they connect with you?
Well, it's on Amazon, of course. And if anybody is viewing this, this is what it looks like. And there's a, like I said, the workbook and everything. They can also order at maurirene.com, which is MAURIRENE.com. It's my website, and you can order a copy there, or like I said, on Amazon. I believe that I'm going to be in Barnes and Noble soon. That's we're still working on that, but
Awesome.
yeah, that's
Good.
that's
Well, we'll
the
put the
best
link
ways.
to that in the show notes for this episode, and I'm going to toss you one more softball pitch here. You can knock it out of the park, whatever direction you want. But right now, we've got pastors listening to this at different places along their journey. Some are really discouraged, beat up. They're experiencing that narrative of the starving pastor, and they don't really see a lot of hope. They've opted out of Social Security years ago. They're approaching retirement. They have nothing set aside. They have no idea what they're going to do financially for their future. There's others that are bought into this idea. They're launching businesses. We have some that are thriving in business. But if you could just speak a word of encouragement or advice to this audience that spans that whole realm, either you can pick one of those profiles or you can say something that blesses all of them. But I'll just leave it wide open ended for you to take in any direction you want. What would you say to encourage the listeners here today?
Well, all work is for God. It doesn't matter if you are a janitor, a pastor, a CEO, a business owner. All work is for God. And I think people forget that. I think people need to go back to scripture and look at all the business owners who were out preaching and discipling.
You know,
Paul, do they not agree? Do people not agree with what he did? That he was out. He was out with the tent making business, and he wrote half the New Testament. Well, I don't know exactly how much, but he
yeah,
wrote a lot of the New Testament, correct?
bet.
So you have someone who we revere very seriously in the Bible, who was out evangelizing to the point of being, beaten and tortured and everything else for Jesus. And he still had a business. And I look at that and I think, well, why can't a pastor have a business? What's the difference? Now, I think that if a pastor had a pornography business, we'd have a problem here. I mean,
Absolutely. Right.
you have to look at the type of business. But we all have callings from God, and sometimes God gives us more than one calling, different times in our lives and at the same time.
Yeah.
I've been called in for a couple of different things at the same time. One of the things I have someone called it a litmus test in the book about your calling, how to find out if it's really truly your calling in the business you should be in. There's questions to ask yourself. And it's rather cool. It wouldn't be a bad idea, because sometimes people go out in a business because they think it's what they should be doing, but maybe they should be doing a different business, or making their business a little bit different. I totally encourage all pastors to have a business, because what if there comes a time when they can't stand at the pulpit anymore because of health issues or what have you? They need an income coming in
Hmm.
beyond standing there.
Yep.
And why shouldn't they? Why should pastors not have the privilege of what everybody else does in this country? Like, we all have the right to work. We all have the right to own a business. We have these freedoms. They aren't just for certain people. They're for
Yep.
everyone. And as long as you are glorifying God with your business, go for it, and don't get discouraged when things don't when well, forget about what people say and just worry about what God says. I've gotten a
Good.
lot of flack for having God in my title of my book. Do you know how many people said when I was writing it, they said, "Oh no, take God out and put spiritual or something in there, and then you'll sell more books. And I'm like, but that's not what God told me to do. I'm
Yeah.
going to be obedient to him, not the people.
Yeah. Good.
If they focus on that and no plan B,
Yeah.
let God deal with if there's a plan B. Just go with glorifying him with your business. And I don't see any reason why any of the pastors couldn't do very, very well and secure, their future. Now, in the meantime, obviously they know this even more than I do, but God will provide. And I hope that that's another thing that people got from my story. There's a big time frame of when I was broke and I had a mortgage. I was, I had bills and I never was late with any payments of any kind. God just made it, he provided for me.
Yeah.
And during the tough times, he will provide for you. But there's nothing that says that you have to be poor and broke and just barely scraping by just because you're a pastor. I don't believe that a pastor has any less rights than anyone else.
Yeah.
And I truly can't believe that God would expect someone to not even make it. He would provide in some way, and the way I see it is that God is providing for pastors in small churches that don't have a large salary. He is providing by giving them a gift or a business.
Yep. I love
Just
that.
my beliefs.
I love that. Well, that's awesome. Mauri, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing. And I'm going to encourage our audience to go get a copy of your book. Like I say, I will be the proud owner of one within the next week. So looking forward to getting my hands on a copy and reading that. But all the best as you continue to move forward and serving as you're doing. And we'll keep in touch. Sound good?
Thank you. And feel free, anybody, to reach out to me with any questions at any time.
Well, hey, thanks for watching this episode of the EntrePastors podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. If you'd like to get connected to other pastors who are learning to think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs, then we invite you to check us out on Facebook. Just search for the EntrePastors Connect group, answer a few of our simple questions there, and we'd love to include you in the conversations. And if you're really ready to go to the next level, then we invite you to join our EntrePastors membership community. When you become a monthly subscriber, you will receive access to courses, exclusive community, and coaching that will help you along in your own EntrePastors journey. If there's anything else we can do to serve you, please visit us at EntrePastors.com, and we will do our best to serve you there. God bless everybody. See you soon.